Good morning. Very happy to be back, BH. Okay, we're at the bottom of Lamadal Amad Base 34b, the very last line. We are in the midst of the Gemara's discussion and analysis of the story of the spies. Apropos for this week. We discussed the spies' intentions to begin with, to look for negative, and we'll discuss that a little bit as well now. We discussed relating to their names. We also discussed Yeshua and Kalev's ability to withstand the temptation of falling to the scheme of the spies. And primarily, as we learned, that came from connecting to the tzaddik, connecting to the leader. For Yeshua, was directed to Moshe Rabbeinu, who added that extra hey to the letter of his name. And then for Kalev, he took a detour on the trip, went to Hebron and communicated to our forefathers and asking them to support him. And from there, the Gemara discussed a little bit about Hebron. And the Gemara concluded it's not a fertile land for produce. It's a land of rocks, but it's very good for cattle. Right? That's what we discussed.
You brought up the thing with the angel with the giants.
Yeah, that was part of Hebron.
Conversation with Rabbi Gimbel about it. We researched it and everything.
Yeah, by the way, actually recently, someone sent me a link to a video where someone was demonstrating. I have to remember where it is. I have to Google if someone reminds me. They discovered somewhere in some cave, somewhere out in Europe, people, bones or whatever you want to call it, of people that were apparently very huge, very, very large. And they're not what they currently think of as Neanderthals. They're more human-like than
much younger.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're very, very, very big. So just putting that out there.
Now I know where they came from. Just saying.
No, I'm just saying that just like
Rabbinic, just saying.
I'm saying that because we have this idea, because of how far we've advanced in terms of our scientific understanding, that what we know is all there is to know. And it's just not true. The honest science is to understand that what they know is more than what they know yesterday, but it's not the end of what there is to know. It's not as if all the science labs are shutting their doors because, hey, we know everything now. So ruling things out is impossible. As we advance in our science, you become more apparently foolish position to rule something out.
How big were these bombs?
Go have a look. Go have a look. Google it.
They're all
Somewhere out in Europe. I have to find it. I'll have to go back to the link someone sent me and I'll have to look it up. Actually, like in my mind, I bookmarked it to mention in the class because of the thing. So thanks for reminding me. But I have to look it up again. But yeah, as we discover more scientifically, the more we understand that we know much less than we thought. So this counting thing, because it doesn't fit into the scientific rubric, is scientifically foolish. We'll discover soon. We'll discover more. Sorry?
I found out where they came from, and I found out how did they come back after the flood. The flood killed everybody.
The Midrashim talk about that. So I was hanging on to the ark.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, sorry?
Two of them.
Yeah. Anyway, let's continue here. I just bought a book that's been reviewed. It's an old book, but it's redone and revised and added new elements, I think. It's a book called, you found it? It's a book called Mind Over Matter. I just bought it in New York now. And it's a collection of letters from the Rebbe on Torah and science. It's a different approach than the book that you shared with me. Different approach. But it's very, very interesting. It gets into geocentrism versus solar centrism and age of the earth and dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff that Deborah discusses. So
That sounds
if you're,
interesting.
yes, very interesting. So a lot of these letters are available online, and I read a lot of them there. But I just bought the book because it's correlated and organized, and on the front it says revisited and revised. So I'm going to have a read of it. Definitely something, if you're interested in that topic, I would recommend having a look at that book.
It's an English book
Found
that
it?
they found in China, 4,000-year-old giants in a cave.
How recent? Very recently, right?
Uh,
So maybe it is China.
Well,
I thought it was Europe. Maybe it's China.
this is from Cambridge University.
How long ago? What's the date in the article?
Oh, the date of the article
Yeah.
is 2016,
So still fairly recently.
Cambridge University Press.
Anyway,
Yeah, anyway. Sorry.
okay, all to say that the longer we live, the more we'll learn, and just saying, oh, this doesn't scientifically make sense today. Good. So science doesn't know yet. It's okay. I'm okay with that. I give you many examples of this, but not for now. Okay. So the pasuk says, "Vayashuvu mitor haaretz." After the spy stint, they returned from their tour, Hebrew word tour, from the tour of the land at the end of the 40 days, as the verse says. Top of 35a. Then the verse, what is it? One verse later reads, 2 verses later, what's the next verse? Vayelchu vayavoyu. They went and they came back. Now this phrasing seems redundant. The verse just finished saying they came back, they returned from their 40-day tour. And then the verse goes on to say, and they went and they came. That's repetitive. So Rabbi Yochanan therefore says, Mishum Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, quoting Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Makish Halicha Labia. The verse is here to indicate to you that their attitude when they left, the same attitude they had when they returned. So Mabia, just as it is when they returned, Be'et Sarah, clearly they had bad intentions because they came back and said negative. So Af Halicha, so true of their going, was Be'et Sarah, was with negative intention. In other words, as we've already established earlier, but this is coming from a different angle, we should not assume that they went with an open mind. And it so happened that they found that bad information and they came back with negative report. To begin with, they were looking for a negative report.
Mhm.
So that's what the verse says, they came and they went, to inform us that their return was with the same intention that they left. And we can tell from their return what they thought of when they were going out.
It should be the other way around. They went and they came. Then
So it does say they went and they came, sorry, by Yelchu they went, by Yavoyu and they came, yeah.
Yeah.
It does say that, I'm translating it wrong, yes. By Yelchu they went, by Yavoyu and they returned.
That was a miracle in itself, 40 days of, how could you go around Israel in 40 days? Walking.
You could walk the whole Israel 40 days.
even less.
Yeah, and less than that probably. It's not very big.
No, but I think Hashem sped up
You sped it up.
He did, okay, maybe,
It's
yeah,
a commentary.
yeah, okay.
Like 3 times.
That God speed up the, yeah, okay, I'll take
It's
it.
only 1,000
But Israel itself is not very big.
kilometers
I told you, I know people who hiked it. I know people who hiked the whole length of Israel. Yeah, from Tzfat to Eilat.
As big as Vancouver Island. Wow, that's big.
So how long does it take to hike the whole thing? You're walking every day for 6 hours.
2.5-hour drive just from Victoria to.
Yeah, you're walking every day for 7 hours, 6.5, 7 hours. People do it.
It was to limit the punishment, I think.
People do it.
One
That's
day.
right, that's right. Now I remember, yeah.
That's why you capped at 40 minutes.
Right, because it had taken long for them, they would have been stuck in the desert for longer. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, if it was the natural way of walking. If you were
Yeah.
You're walking
20
on a
days.
solid road.
Sorry?
You're walking on sand dunes. It's hard to walk on sand.
Yeah,
And they had it
Anyway.
on,
They didn't have any major highways.
yeah. Okay, so the verse, so this is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's commentary. That to begin with, they were looking for the negative. We discussed this as a rule in life.
Yeah, good lesson.
When you're looking for negative, you will find negative. When you're looking for positive, you will find positive. The pasuk says, "Olam nasan beliba shel adam." God gives the entire world in man's heart. It's man's heart to decide, is the world a good place or a bad place? If you decide it's a good place, you will see good. If you decide it's a bad place, you will see bad. It's the way it is. It's one of the things you can learn from the Rebbe's talks.
You go negative, you come back negative.
That's right. The Rebbe's talks, there was like almost bias to good. Bias to good. Like before the Rebbe starts, the Rebbe has a bias Jews are good. Now let's start talking. The world is good. Now let's start talking. It's biased to good. You see this in many, many different areas.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
And it's incredible. And sometimes even they will talk and say a famous talk of on his birthday, 1972. Never goes on and on and talking about how the world seems like a dark place. How can we expect it to make the world a better place if it seems dark and so on and so forth, on and on and on. Then Never concludes and says, well, that's why we have the Mimer. No, sorry, it's the 10th of, must be the 10th of Shvat then. He's never talks about Basi Lagani, but it's 1972. So then Never goes, well, that's what the verse says. Basi Lagani, I've come to my garden. God's telling you, this is my garden. And if it's my garden, it's a good place, and you could also make it good. So let's switch from Never's beginning of the talk to the end of the talk. All the things that were said about the world being negative, they didn't respond to them and say, well, it's not so bad. Look at the silver lining. It's not how they ever approached it.
Yeah, no.
They just said, yeah, it seems bad to you. Fine. But the pasuk says it's my garden, and therefore you should see it that way. And if you see it that way, you can march forward and make it happen. It's a switch. And that's kind of what we're learning here. The spies went to begin with looking for negative. So they found negative. Good. So you went to begin with looking for negative, you're going to find it. But if you decide to go with the positive attitude, you're going to see the good everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. Now here comes a very interesting teaching as well. Okay, so the verse continues and says, "Vayisapru lo," and they told him, and the spies coming back and informing, I think Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayomeru, and they said, "Banu, we arrived," etc. The verse goes on to say, "We arrived at the land that you told us to go visit, and it's flowing with milk and honey, and here's its fruit." That's verse 27, chapter 13. Iksiv, and then verse 30, 2 verses later, says, Ephes ki azam. Yet the people are, no. Maybe it's 1 or 2 verses later. Sorry, it's not verse 30. It's 1 or 2 verses later. It says, Ephes ki azam. Yet these people are very, very strong, and we can't overtake them. Now it seems peculiar if they begin with a good and positive, land flowing with milk and honey. Yet the people are too strong. If we just finish saying their intention is negative, and that's why they saw negative, and they should come and say, the place is desolate, the place is horrible, weird fruit, people are too strong. But they start off with the positive by saying it's a land flowing with milk and honey, there's blessing there. And then they would go on to say that it's too difficult. It says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan says, in parentheses, the Gemara gives like a mnemonic to remember the discussions. Rabbi Yochanan says, Bishum Rabbi Meir, in the name of Rabbi Meir. Before Rabbi Yochanan quoted Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, now Rabbi Yochanan is quoting Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, they're all contemporaries. They are the end of the Mishnaic scholars. And Rabbi Yochanan studied under Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the beginning of the Gemara's era. So he's often the one that would transmit to us information from the previous generation that's not in the Mishnah. So here he's not quoting a Mishnah, but he's quoting people from the Mishnah. So before he's quoting Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, now he's quoting Rabbi Meir. This is Rabbi Yochanan. This is his role, as it were, that transitionary stage between the Mishnaic era and the Talmudic era, the Gemara era. So it says Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Meir. Here's why it began with something positive. Because Kol Lashon Hara, any negative speak, even if it's a lie and it's exaggerated and it's taken out of context, but she'ein bo dvar emes b'tchilasei, if it doesn't have any kernel of truth at the beginning, ein miskayim b'soifai, doesn't end up being believed in the end. All lie must have some kernel of truth. Otherwise, the lie has nothing to stand on. What are you saying if there's no kernel of truth?
Leveraging the truth.
All lies is a distortion of the truth. That's what it is at the end of the day. Because God is truth. God and everything that exists is created by Hashem. So at the center of everything, there's divine energy. That divine energy is truth. It's just a question of it's distorted. That's even idol worship at its core. At its core, its original thought is not that there is no God. there's a God, but then we're also in charge. God's on top of this hierarchy, and on top of Olympus, whatever you want to call that place, and under it the sub-gods. So to deny and say no God, it's a lie you can't sustain. So you keep the kernel of truth, but distort it. That's what it all is. Now, you can even take a simple but crass example. Like if I were, okay, I usually use the example, I was in New York yesterday. That's not a lie, I was. if I said I was in California yesterday, it's a lie, I was not in California. But California exists and yesterday exists. And I lied about it. Right? But you cannot say a lie about that which is not true. What words are coming out of your mouth? What words are coming out of your mouth to describe something that has zero foundation in anything reality? Nothing. Whatever you say must have some part of it that's true, otherwise there's nothing to stand on.
Basis in reality.
It has to have some sort of something, right? So even the worst of lies must have a truth in it. And the more truth that lie has, the more believable it is. Right? Because the more closely linked it is to the truth.
So why are you not telling the truth?
That's right. So when you hear something and it's completely wrong, terrible, distorted, there's always a kernel of truth. And it takes sifting to know what's what. You look at people also, all negative, all bad. No such thing. There's a kernel of truth in everyone, in everything. And it takes effort to know how to extract it. Right? That's what Tanya explains the difference between that which is permitted to eat or to do and that which is forbidden. The word in Hebrew for forbidden and permissible is asr, is forbidden, and mutter is permissible. Those two words also mean released or tied down. In our morning prayers, when we thank Hashem for not being in jail, we say mater asurdem, the one who releases the bound, using the same words. Mutter, permissible, released, asr, forbidden, and bound. So explains Tanya, why is this food asr? Why is this food forbidden? Because the good that's in there is bound so deeply that I can't extract it. So Torah says don't eat that, because you can't extract the good. There is good in there because God's giving it energy. Otherwise, how does a pig exist? But it's too bound for you to extract. But not because there's no godliness in there. Everything has godliness in there. Every person and everything. The only question is if I have the ability to extract that good from there. Not we learn here perversely from the spies lie. That when they lie, when they come back with a distortion, there is some truth in there. That's to begin with. The land is flowing with milk and honey. Truth and a blessing. But they go on to say, yes, it's true that there's milk and honey, but it's too tied down. It's too bound for us to extract. We can't get out of it. It's too strong. The people who are guarding this milk and honey are too strong. We can't do it. It's usser. It's bound. It's too deeply sunken for us to extract. We don't have that energy. Even though there's some good there, but we don't have the capacity to achieve it. So better leave it alone.
Meaning step usher, mutter, and chayav.
Yeah, so usser, mutter, permissible, forbidden. Pater chayav, exempt, liable. Tamei tahor, pure, impure. Those are your three. You think of it like this. Engagement, am I allowed to engage or not engage, right? Purity or impurity, ritual, and then there is liability. Liable or not liable, those are three categories. And each one has the positive and the negative, right? Okay, a few more lines. Says the Gemara like this. The verse reads, Vayahas Kalev esa'am. And Kalev silenced the people. El Moshe to Moshe. So the phrasing is kind of interesting. Because in the beginning it says Kalev silenced them, Vayahas Kalev. And then it says to Moshe. You silence the people to Moshe. What do you silence? You don't silence to. You usually persuade the people to. So what do you mean by silence them to Moshe? So Amar Rabba, therefore Rabba explains that the word has, which means to silence, can also come from the word hast, which means to veer or to redirect. So therefore Rabba explains, Sheisiton bedvarim, he veered them towards Moshe through words. So he did the inverse of what the spies did. the spies, as we just learned, they used a kernel of truth to distort and sway the people away, saying, yes, there's a beautiful blessing in there, but the people are too strong. You can't go down there. You can't do it. And Caleb went the other way, lured them in by making them think he was speaking in a negative, and then through the back door, brought them to the truth. He's going to explain how. Pasach, so the Gemara explains how. Pasach Yeshua began by saying like this. Began by trying to convince the people to follow Moshe Rabbeinu. The place is good. Moshe Rabbeinu can do it. Don't worry. But what happened is, to get the translation right, Aramaic. The Kamishtai. One second, where am I? Yeah, Kamishtai, as he was trying to convince the people, Amrile, they said to him, Din Roish Katia Yamalal, someone with a cut off head, so to speak, is going to speak to us? Someone with a cut off head, meaning Yeshua had no children. Had no children. We're not going to listen. We're not listening to a guy like that. Not interested. So Amar, it could be that they were thinking that the reason why Yeshua was trying to convince us is because he wants a legacy. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu told him, you're going to lead the people until Israel. So he wants to take us that we become his legacy. We have to suffer because because he wants us to be his legacy. We're not interested. That's maybe what the Gemara means here. So therefore Kalev said to himself, if I try to convince them, Amri Bey Milsa, they're going to say something negative about me and just going to cut me out. They're going to silence me also. If I just come to them and say, no, you guys are horrible. Listen to me. You guys are wrong. People don't respond to that. Yeshua tried and they just said, yeah, you have an agenda. That's what happens when someone's doing something wrong and you want to correct them and you just call them out straightforward and say, oh, you guys are horrible, bad thinking, and da-da-da. People usually push back at you and say, you have an agenda and I'm not listening to you. It's often the case. So Kalev said, if I tried to convince them, like Yeshua just did, they're just going to cut me down also. So what's the effectiveness of that? So he has to find some way to validate what they're saying and then lure them in.
So this is out of order. It's not in chronological order.
What do you mean?
It started off saying the verse is Caleb still.
Okay, 1 second. The Gemara is explaining how he got to that point. 1 second. No.
So, right, it's explaining how he got.
That's right. Right. The Gemara quotes the verse.
Seems out of order.
It's all Rabbi Yochanan speaking now, right? Rabbi Yochanan quoted Rabbi by saying that the word that Kalev stilling them means he convinced them. The Gemara is now explaining what he did to convince them right now.
Yeah.
By giving the backstory. The first Yeshua spoke, trying to convince them, no, you guys are wrong. Moshe is great. They said, you have an agenda. We're not listening. So Kalev says, I can't do that. They're not going to listen to me either. I have to find some effective way to lure them in. And the only way to do that is to validate what they're saying. To say, maybe, but come look at this. And then they can hear. So Amar Lahan, what did he do? He said to them like this. Is this the only thing that the son of Amram, Moshe Rabbeinu, did for us? So Savri, they think, that he's about to talk to them about Moshe Rabbeinu's negative. Is this the first thing that he did to us? I'm like, oh yeah, tell us more. Ishtiku, they sat silent, listening to him. And there's the silence part. He silenced them by making them think he was validating their position. Is it the only thing Moshe did for us? He did so many things for us, so many crazy things. So they're listening. Amalahu, he said to them, yes, indeed, he did crazy things for us. He took us out of Egypt. He split the sea. He gave us the manna. So you're right. Moshe Rabbeinu is not the ordinary. He is not the ordinary. He does extraordinary. Understand? As opposed to telling, no, you guys are wrong. If that's how you begin, the listener's not listening. Points to you and says you have an agenda. So Kalev doesn't begin by saying you're wrong. He says, yeah, you guys are right. Moshe Rabbeinu is this out of the ordinary person. Do you know how many things he did for us? All these extraordinary, wonderful things. Validating the position and then redirecting it in a different way. And therefore, and therefore, if Moshe Rabbeinu would tell us, build ladders, and climb to the heavens, Loi nishmaloi. Are we not going to listen to him? Look what kind of extraordinary, wild things he's done for us. So you're saying this is all too wild? It is indeed too wild. But Moshe Rabbeinu knows how to do that. He's done that already. He's done all this wild stuff for us. So instead of saying you're wrong, he says you guys are right. But we can handle it anyway, because we've had worse. So, and therefore we concluded, Allah nala ve'irashna isa. This is the end of that verse. We can indeed rise up and emigrate and inherit the land.
In other words, this wasn't the first time
Exactly.
the Israelites were.
That's right.
confronted with a seeming
Exactly.
Impossible.
So when the Jews said it's too difficult, we can't do it, it's too much to do. So instead of saying, no, you guys are wrong, we can all do it, it's no big deal. He says, you're right. Is this the first thing Moshe Rabbeinu did to us? I'll tell you much more. And they're all listening and saying, yeah, you're right, let's hear. To which he says, he's done even more extraordinary things. We can handle this too. And then that changed their minds. So soon we're going to learn more about the spies claim. But here we have, each one of these things can be a whole fabrengen. We began with positive attitude, the spies to begin with look for negative, therefore they found negative. Then we went to the mayor who told us that every lie has a kernel of truth. And now we're learning that you want to undo that, you have to find that kernel of truth and extract it. You can't just come and say you're wrong. They're not, it's the art of persuasion. As soon as you tell someone that's how you begin, you are wrong, the defenses go up, they're not listening anymore. You have to first validate, find that kernel of truth. You're calling it extraordinary. Yes, I agree with you, it is extraordinary. And this is not the first time we've gone through extraordinary circumstances, but we've come through, so we can do this too. Very beautiful dialogue and lessons as the Gemara plays it out. And then tomorrow, we're going to look at the spies claim, and I'm going to share with you at least the main point of a beautiful talk from the Rebbe on this line in the Gemara, on tomorrow's lines, and it's actually this week's Project Look at the Sichos. Those who are following, Project Look at the Sichos is a project worldwide where people learn the same Sikha every week. And the idea is, of course, everybody's learning the same talk from the Rebbe. There's lots of conversation, and also creates resources because everybody's learning the same thing. So you get all kinds of classes from all kinds of people explaining the class and giving summaries to the class in depth at all levels. So Google Project Lakutei Sichos, check out their website. It's full of fantastic resources. Project Lakutei Sichos.
I can also recommend on Facebook, Likutei Torah.
Look at Torah. It's a little more advanced, I think, though.
Yeah, it's a little more advanced.
A little more advanced.
I get the
Project Lakutei Sichos has the full range. Beginners with summaries of the talk, all the way to advanced, in-depth footnote sources, analysis of the Rebbe's talk. There's an app also.
The guy writing it is a Kaplan with a K, of course.
Yeah. So there's an app also, Project Lakutei Sichos, and you can have a look, spend some time looking at the website and their app. It's something worthwhile. So God willing, tomorrow, we're going to learn that Gemara, and then I'll share with you at least the main points of the Rebbe's talk regarding the Gemara we're going to learn tomorrow, about the spies claim.
There's a lot of books in
Certainly, Lakutei Sichos, there was magnum opus.
there's so many things on one
Yeah.
parsha.
So every week they choose.
So I'm stuck. I just have one.
Yeah. So go check out the project of Lakutei Sichos. They translate it. They choose one every week. Every week, 2 sichos, 2 talks every week, and they provide all kinds of resources for that talk: translations, video summaries, audio summaries, in-depth analysis. Sometimes even like graphics, like flow charts to follow the sicha. Have a look at their website. It's something very, very, very special. Okay, you have a wonderful day.